Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I just need to go over a few of the things the Tories have been saying in the last day, which has particularly infuriated me, from blaming others for their cock-ups like naughty children to persisting with claims which nobody now believes, taking the public for fools. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So, paying close attention to politics all the time, all day, every day, you see the worst of people. It's fairly unpleasant at times. You have to be able to look at the whole clown show academically. Otherwise, I think you'd lose your sanity. But now and then, I just get particularly annoyed about the absolute state of things. You consider the number of Tory MPs and their agents and useful idiots in the media and assorted dodgy think tanks, and you think there's probably about 1,000 people in this country who have been influential in the damage which has been caused to this country over the last 14 years. And yet, they still blame others. They still insist they're doing a great job. Take some responsibility. And first out the gate is John Redwood, Tory MP. Yesterday, he was blaming the Bank of England for having created too much money and bought too many bonds, then selling too many bonds and squeezing money, giving us a recession. The absolute nerve of the man. The reason the Bank of England created a load of new money, as he puts it, and bought a load of bonds, was to stop the run on the pound when his mate Kwasi Kwarteng stood up in Parliament and announced his mini-budget. Do you remember that? His government, and he supported it, announced a load of unfunded tax cuts to the point where investors in the money markets thought, oh, the government's just announced that they're going to bankrupt the UK in a few years. And I mean literally bankrupt the UK. They announced a budget statement which gave the strong impression we would not be able to service our debt, and so bonds in the pound sterling, or gilts as they're known, became way less valuable. Investors abandoned them. These are investors. They're not woke Marxists. They invest in the money markets, for goodness sake. You can't get much more capitalist than that. We were headed for a 1992 style run on the pound, and pension funds were collapsing. The Bank of England can be criticised for something, sure, but on this occasion they acted swiftly to counter the damage. They created that load of new money and used it to buy bonds in order to prop up the pound and stabilise the markets. Afterwards, when the pound returned to its normal value, those who were praising Truss's budget at the time asked, well, what's all the fuss about? The pound's gone back up. Yes, because of what the bank did. But the pension funds are still smaller now. That means there's a load of people in this country will now get less from their work pension than would have been the case if someone had sewn Kwarteng's mouth shut. As for the selling too many bonds and squeezing money afterwards, the Bank of England did that because the government told them to. Inflation was rising and the government said to the Bank of England, that's your job, you deal with it. Now, how do you deal with inflation? You've effectively got three ways. First, if it's caused by low availability, you can boost that, usually by boosting production or reducing trade barriers. Well, the Bank of England doesn't control the means of supply. The government have some levers they could have used here. Brexit sort of knackered supply chains, but we don't really produce that much that the government controls. But there is some things the government could have done something, not a lot. Second, you can fix prices. Again, the Bank of England has no power to do so. The government can, though. Now, some price controls would be politically impossible, sure, but they could have properly capped energy prices. They could have kept rents low if they'd chosen to. But that is for the government to do. Third, you can restrict the amount of money in the system. Because the Bank of England basically has two things it can do. It can determine how much money there is, and it can determine interest rates and therefore the cost of borrowing. So that's what the Bank of England did. The Conservatives did not adopt any inflation-reducing economic policies, so it was all down to monetary policy for the Bank of England. So they just said, well, we'll just have to reduce the amount of money then. They did it because the government told them to. And they were explicitly backing the Bank of England all last year for doing exactly that, despite knowing it risked recession. Take some bloody responsibility. This is like setting fire to your house, getting the fire brigade round to put it out, and then complaining about the water damage. Then we had Victoria Prentice, our latest hapless health secretary, still insisting that they're building these 40 mythical new hospitals. Nobody believes this anymore. It was bad enough that anyone ever did. And it's not just that the target's been missed a little. It's not like we're on to 35 or something and it got derailed because of COVID. You'd think, okay, fair enough. We don't have any new hospitals, not one. We were never getting any new hospitals. What would you do with 40 new hospitals anyway? We don't have the staff for the existing hospitals. If we cannot staff existing hospitals, what's the point of a new one? At the time the promise was made, those of us paying attention, we knew it basically meant maintenance. They weren't going to actually build new hospitals. They were going to replace a few buildings that were the end of their lifespan. The normal maintenance. You just know how it worked at the policy meetings. You know, 2019 general election coming up, they're working on the manifesto. Boris Johnson's there. Oh, hospitals. People like hospitals. What are we doing about hospitals? Well, nothing really, Prime Minister. I mean, we'll have to replace a few before they collapse. Oh, how many? I don't know, about 40? OK, put in the manifesto, we're building 40 new hospitals. That's what happened. But it was just maintaining existing hospitals. Only, it's not even that, is it? Because the maintenance didn't even happen. So hospitals have been falling down because they didn't even replace the ones at the end of their life. We have hospitals literally collapsing and the government are doing nothing. You know, there was one in Manchester not long ago, collapsed, where there's operating theatres. So now surgeries aren't carried out there anymore because they can't. The operating theatres are unsafe. So that's just now treatment not taking place. The government are doing nothing. There's no plan to rebuild that collapsed hospital, just like there's no plan to rebuild any of them. They're leaving it all for Labour. All for Labour to squeeze their budgets as much as possible. They did what they said was a tax-cutting budget this time. No spending for their mess. Leave it all for Labour. Make it as hard as possible for Labour to look good. A scorched earth policy against their own country just to prevent their opponents delivering. We should not have a political system that allows for this. These people should be nowhere near power. They shouldn't be allowed to run a car boot sale, let alone a country. Then Jeremy Hunt, still insisting that his budget is a tax-cutting budget, despite being called out on the reality multiple times. Even the mainstream media can't go along with it. As a result of the budget, some higher earners will be a little bit better off in theory, but you have to hit the sweet spot, and nobody on ordinary incomes does. Pensioners are going to be paying an extra £8 billion in taxes. That is still a marvel to me, 5 days after the budget was announced, that the Tories are actually putting taxes up for their precious retired voters in a pre-election budget. But also those on the minimum wage, or even a bit above it, they're going to be paying more in tax as well. And this is because of the fiscal drag caused by freezing income tax bands, so that in real terms they're actually being lowered, forcing more people into higher rates of tax on some of their income. The people who gained from this budget are really those who are wealthy enough to pay capital gains tax, because that was slashed by 4%. I'm just pleased that people are seeing this time. They won't in the future. They haven't in the past. They won't in the future. It's not that people are suddenly paying attention to credible economists or reading the OBR reports, thinking to themselves, oh, we should probably get the expert view of the budget, not just what the Daily Mail has to say about it. It's just that things are so bad now, people can feel it. Like if the government squeeze your income, but you know, you've got enough to afford the standard of living you like. You know, if you've got money left over at the end of the month, most people don't really notice. You don't notice that you don't have quite as much left at the end. You're just pleased you've got money left at the end. But right now, people can't get to the end of the month. And I'm not just talking about people on the lowest incomes, people on like ordinary incomes. They're having to consciously cut back every few months. Some people every month, it's like a new thing that we now can't afford. What are we going to do? They'll still be cutting back after the budget is implemented next month. If the Tories do go long with an autumn election, they're not suddenly going to feel flush after summer. They're still going to feel the impact of what was in reality a tax-raising budget. And if they do hold it in autumn, at a time where people are then starting to have to think about putting the heating back on again. The Tories had this one shot to at least try to pretend they were going to improve things for people. We knew it was all going to be a con. They were going to turn the taps on. Oh, we've turned the corner, lads, like they always do. We've turned the corner The taps are rolling out. It's all brilliant. Don't let Labour ruin it. And then straight after the election, taps back off again. Squeeze back on. We knew how it was going to work. You know, they adopted a couple of Labour's tax policies to make it appear that maybe they just were going to go, right, we're just going to focus on ordinary people here, try and get them, get a feel-good factor going to get some votes. But then, no, it was just tax cuts for the rich. Tax rises for those on low to modest incomes. But, you know, we'll tell them they're getting more money and see if they're dumb enough to believe it. Well, thankfully, they're not this time. Even facing wipeout in a general election, the Tories simply couldn't take even this budget seriously. They're like the scorpion on the frog's back, aren't they? But somehow, the fact that people aren't falling in for it this time, somehow, and it shouldn't, it just makes it worse for me. Like, I should be more infuriated when they're treating the country like this and getting away with it. But somehow the sheer self-destructive stupidity makes it worse. Because if people were falling for it, you would say, well, this is evil, greedy people taking advantage, doing what they do. Politics inevitably attracts these sorts of people. You could understand it. It would make sense. I don't know what to put their behaviour down to right now, because it's hurting everyone, including themselves. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.